some coffee? No coffee. No caffeine? Anyway, how is everybody? Good to see you a week later. Doing well. Okay. Well, today we're going to continue with our talks. We're going to talk about a topic, myth or fact, looking at the research and classroom practice. Okay, so today we're going to look at some of the issues that often come up with teaching teaching English as a second or foreign language. Very common issues. They cover a diversity of areas. And we're going to see, is it a myth or is each one a fact? We're going to look at each issue. We're going to engage in some practical insights. We'll do some exercises, keep you awake, all right? Since you didn't have coffee, all right? And we got the lights on. So we got a lot to cover today, all right? Are you ready? All right, let's see. All right, so we're going to look at each issue or topic. We're going to discuss whether it's a myth or a fact. Then we're going to look at classroom practice, how classroom practice reflects the issue or the topic. And finally, we'll go to the research, all right, to see what the research tells us. Okay? The ideal situation is to have an integration or an alignment between research and classroom practice. In other words, there's something called applied linguistics. And applied linguistics is the research that people do that is supposed to help teachers make informed decisions in the classroom, okay, based on what we find out as we explore all of these topics and issues, okay? So let's take a look. Let's see what the first one is. I think it has to do with grammar. There we go. Myth or fact? Grammar teaching does not lead to second language acquisition. Now, if you remember, second language acquisition is the language that we assimilate, right? That we form a part or make a part of our interlanguage, all right? So if we were to draw it as a process, interlanguage, have you heard that term before? Interlanguage? Okay. I call it the Big Bang language theory. Have you heard of the Big Bang theory? That's how the universe began, all right? Some little molecule or atom somewhere, right, in the darkness, exploded, it started to expand, and that's what made up the universe, and it's still growing, a little more slowly, but it's still growing. The same thing happens with language. Our first exposure to language, at whatever age it is, whether we're 1 year old or 2 years old, 3 years old, whatever it is, at some particular point, we have a first contact with the second language, okay? And that first contact is assimilated by the brain. And then over time, we are exposed to more and more exemplars of the language, okay? And eventually we get to practice it. We get to use it, okay? So it begins to grow. Just like the universe, it begins to expand. So interlanguage is our version of the second language, and it evolves, it grows, it expands. Some of it eventually becomes very accurate, very good in its form, okay? Some of it is a little rough, it has mistakes, right? So this is very good. This is something that is highly accurate. Some of it is rough but largely comprehensible. And some of it has a lot of errors. Very difficult to understand sometimes. And these are different levels of acquisition. This could be full acquisition. Okay, so we have fully acquired the language. Then you have partial acquisition. Okay, so we've been exposed to the language, we've learned it, they've tried to teach it to us, we've used it, but we're still making mistakes, but nevertheless, we're still largely comprehensible. And this is initial acquisition. This is when we are starting to learn it. Okay, we just had our first lesson a couple of weeks ago. We've had our homework assignments, we have our project, or whatever, so it's very rough. We make a lot of mistakes, okay? So, acquisition is a process, okay? Acquisition is something that takes time, all right? And so the question is, when we teach grammar in the classroom, does grammar teaching the way we traditionally see it? For example, today, dear students, we're going to learn the present perfect. That's a traditional lesson, right? Very typical. Okay, does that lead to second language acquisition? That's the question. Is that true or not true? Now, according to the belief, many believe it doesn't. Grammar teaching doesn't lead to second language acquisition. All right, so for example, Stephen Krashen, here we go with Krashen again. Krashen has something called the acquisition learning hypothesis. He believes there are two different systems. Acquisition is one thing, and learning is another. Now, learning has a great emphasis on accuracy. So this is what we teach. When we teach grammar traditionally, we put a lot of emphasis on accuracy, okay? And we are developing explicit knowledge. There are two types of knowledge, explicit and implicit. So the belief is, no, grammar teaching doesn't help second language acquisition. It helps with explicit knowledge, where you can describe grammar, how it works. You can draw the formula. You can conjugate the verbs. You can do exercises. But you can't necessarily use it for communication. Okay? So talk to your partner. Do you think this is true? Is this a myth or is this a fact? Grammar teaching doesn't lead to acquisition. It just leads to what Krashen calls learning. Talk to your partner and let me know what you think in about a minute. Yeah? Find a partner as well. All right. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Percy, what do you think? Percy's our first volunteer today. What do you think? Do you think that's a myth or a fact?
Well, it is a controversial question. And definitely, a person can speak without being on the ground.
Okay.
That's why I think that's what I think.
Okay.
And we can perfectly speak without being taught ground.
Okay. All right. Through exposure to input. Okay. That's an excellent. So let's put that down. Let me see. So Percy says we don't necessarily need grammar to acquire language. We can acquire language through simple input. Exposure to expansive input. Yeah? Okay. Okay, so exposure to input. Okay, so Percy says we don't need grammar. Okay. Saul, what do you think?
Grammar might be an important part for acquiring a language, but it's not the only thing we need. So we must be exposed to different other things in order to acquire the language, whereas our partner said.
But do you think that grammar teaching doesn't contribute at all? Or does it contribute? So that's the question here. You think it does? Okay. Okay. So you think this is a myth, right? That would mean that you think it's a myth. Okay. Eleazar?
Well, I agree with Percy in a certain way, because that's proven scientifically. You see babies being born in a country speaking the language is English, first language, so it's no problem. Spanish as well.
Okay.
It's just when you, like you were saying analytical earlier about when you become a teacher, you need to know grammar.
You need to know grammar. Okay. All right. Very good. So what do we really know? What we really know. Well, let's see an example first. Let's see if grammar teaching actually helps. Okay, we're gonna see a mini grammar lesson. So this guy, I don't know who he is. We found him somewhere. Okay, he's gonna give us a little lesson, and you tell me what is he trying to do, and do you think what he's doing is going to be helpful for the students? Okay, so let me see first. I'm going to try it through here. This doesn't work, so I'm going to try it through here. All right, everybody, great job. It looks like you really understand the grammar. There is and there are. So let's take it to the next step. If you look at the examples of the book, they're not very exciting. Let's personalize the grammar. You're 4. They're like 20 on this side. All right, Karina's coming over here. This is the green team. The green team. You are the red team. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to give you some time to write sentences on the board. Okay? Now, this is a basic course. I want you to look at the big picture. Okay? And you're going to write each person. There's going to be one person at a time per team going up. And you're going to write a sentence. What grammar do you think you need to describe what you see? Present continuous. You're going to go up. You're going to write a sentence. You're going to come back. You're going to leave the marker here. Another person goes up and writes a sentence. Then what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if your sentences are correct. The team with the most sentences correct wins. But if there are mistakes, the teams can steal points from each other. Okay? All right. Are you ready? Let me get my timer ready. Remember, you only write one example. You come back, you leave the marker there. Next person comes up. Yeah? Let's see. Let's see what we get. Next person for the red team. What's going on? The green team has one other sentence. Okay, look, it's starting to take the lead. The time is starting to tick away. We're starting to approach the final lane. It might be, look at that, the green team is ahead. The time has elapsed. It's time to check. Let me see, but they have to be correct. All of them have to be correct. Let me see. Oh, I got to check my picture too. I got to make sure it's a real example. Let me see. It says, a woman is driving a red car. Okay, good. Oh, be careful with your punctuation. Be careful. I'm going to let it go this time. I'm going to let it go. Don't worry. Whenever you compete, you see what happens. Okay. The man is singing. There's a singing man. Is he by the, is that the guy with the guitar? And he's singing. Yeah, okay, all right. The victors. The green team, the gold medal. Gold medal for the green team. Applause. The silver medal for the red team. Applause. According to Dr. Rod Ellis, and he says that the best type of practice for grammar is whenever we want the students to focus on meaning, but they must use a specific grammatical form to perform the meaning-focused activity. Does that make sense? So they're thinking about meaning, but they must use a target grammar to finish the activity. Okay, so here you came up with a lot of examples of the present continuous. But you were always thinking about meaning, not form. Yeah.
But, how they will come out with these sentences, with the NG form, if they haven't been taught earlier?
No. In other words, they are taught first.
Oh, okay.
And then the activity comes later. This is the practice that you have, yeah? Which is better than the control practice. The control practice is more traditional, and this is more open practice, meaning focused, all right? What we call planned focus on form, okay? Very good. All right, so let's turn this back on. Reading. We're going to look at reading. I've heard this before. I don't know if you have. Peruvian students don't like to read. Yeah? You think it's true? Somebody said true. I think it was Pierre, right? Did you say it was true? Yeah? How many of you think it's true? Peruvian students don't like to read. Yeah? Okay. So why bother teaching reading? Do you agree with that? They don't like to read. So why are we going to teach them reading? You agree with that? We still have to teach it. You think we still have to teach it? Even if they don't like it? So we have, like, giving them pea soup.
No, but they read for pleasure. If you show them something that they like to know about, and if you guide them, if you motivate them, they do it.
So most of you agree, Peruvian students don't like to read. They don't care about reading too much, yeah?
It depends.
It depends, Eliezer. What do you mean by it depends?
Maybe if we present a topic that will be interesting to them, you know, they will be reading it. Otherwise, they'll be illiterate.
Okay. Well, you have a point, right? What if we present something that they want to read? Because otherwise they'd be illiterate. Yeah? They know how to read. So you're saying they don't like to read because of what we give them, what we normally give them. But there are a couple of things here. Number one, we have to think that the tradition for teaching reading hasn't changed very much in 30 years, 40 years. Okay? We tell students what to read. We don't give them a sense of choice. And usually when you don't give people a sense of choice, they read most of the time what they don't want to read. So you're forcing them to read things they don't care about. So Eliezer has a point, right? Even when I was growing up, right, we had to read a book during the summer and write a book report for September when we went back to school. And we were given a title. The same thing happens here. They give you a title. You got to read this book. We don't care if you like it or not. You got to read it. Yeah? And that's not how it works. Now, you were mentioning before reading for pleasure. When you read for pleasure, it's called extensive reading. Okay? This is when we finally get people to read because they want to read, and they read what they want, not what we tell them to read. We can't force people to read things. So there's a culture where we force people to read things they don't want to read, number one. Number two, there's a problem with access. It's not Peruvian students' fault that there aren't libraries in every neighborhood. You don't have libraries here. There should be libraries here, right? In every single neighborhood. That's not the students' fault. But in the digital age, it's a little easier to make reading available. Plus, today's students read differently. A lot of them don't like to read those traditional books anymore. They like to read short, fast texts, right? They go through the internet, they read what they want very quickly, they move to the next thing. So everything is changing. But these are things we have to consider. And the research shows that if students are given what they want to read, they will read. And I'll tell you something. I did something somewhere, I don't remember where we worked with tens of thousands of students. We created a reading program. And we integrated intensive reading and extensive reading. Eventually, 72% of the students were reading 3 or more titles per month because we were making them available on the intranet, the institutional intranet.